Hi, how's everybody doing today? This is Rich here on behalf of Rich TV Live with our very special guest, the CEO of Halo Labs, Kiran Sidhu. How you doing today, Kiran?
I'm good. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year to you. This is the first time we've actually spoke in quite a long time, and you've been traveling everywhere. So
True.
we have lots of things to talk about today, lots of catching up to do. So why don't we get started, and maybe you can just kind of start with what we haven't talked about in the last month. Like, we could start from there. Like, what's all the big things you've been doing, all the big news that's been happening? I know there's tons of
Well,
things happening.
let's start sort of with a long-term view of Halo. And
Sure.
so Halo's really sort of focus is to be a multi-country operator, right? You hear about multi-state operators. Ours is multi-country operator.
Yes.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact that really 2022 to 2025, you'll see Europe and the rest of the world start to eclipse North America in terms of marijuana consumption growth. Albeit it will be medical and a little bit different in the way it rolls out, it will definitely start to eclipse what we're seeing here. And keep in mind that you already have mature markets in Colorado, Washington, and Oregon, right? California arguably isn't a mature market because it's moving from a medical regime to a recreational regime, and the number of dispensary outlets in California have not grown sufficiently to keep up with demand due to California's regulatory morass at local and state levels. So North America is sort of our near-term focus, but really our longer-term focus is rest of the world. And sort of our rest of the world plan, which we've been articulating, is starting to through,
Great.
come to fruition. So at Buffalo, in down in Africa, in the middle of South Africa, is Lesotho, which is a small country that sits in the middle of South Africa that we know about, which has been the most forward-thinking country outside of Canada and Uruguay in terms of medical exportation and production of cannabis. We're there, Canopy is there, Afria is there, Supreme is there, and it's becoming quite the hub. There we have sort of I would say license-wise, the largest license. And as far as I can tell, we're putting up the largest cultivation that I know of there in terms of starting with a 5-hectare forced air greenhouse grows. Right now we have 8 hoop houses up. We're planting genetics. DNA is coming down. I hope Don or Aaron will be down there in the next 2 weeks. We're shipping their genetics out from Amsterdam. And, we're going to have a really, in my mind, a really good growth. A lot of people, keep emphasizing this whole concept of cost in Africa. That's wonderful. We're going to have low cost, but we're going to have arguably the best genetics, right?
Wow.
I would challenge anyone to say that, on an international basis, let's take California aside, on an international basis, DNA's genetics, as Canopy's proven in Canada, as they've proven in Germany, as they've proven in Europe, are the best genetics. And to have that exclusivity in Lesotho right now, and to be able to start exporting to Europe, is just a big win for us.
Huge.
So
Absolutely.
we're really hunkered down there. Andreas is headed out there with the DNA guys for a couple of weeks. We have our growers on the ground. We're expecting our first harvest still in April.
Nice.
We've got 1,000 beautiful plants up. The king came and visited us with the queen. It was the first time him and the queen have have been to a cannabis cultivation. We had lunch. He promised to come out in November, and this is like a real king. I mean, there are only 3 kings in all of Africa: Morocco, Swaziland, and Lesotho. And so he came out, he visited. There's some great pictures on Twitter about that. So that's going really well, and we should actually start to see some meaningful revenue from there by, let's say, Q2 of this year. GACP certification we've spoken about is also going on. That's being finalized. Hopefully some news will be coming out about that. We have a whole delegation coming from Malta. So that's all good. Then what we've done, which we did over the Christmas holidays, is we've added meaningful UK distribution.
Yes.
So the UK is a market really in its infancy, but it's growing from a very small base very quickly. And it's sort of the old Canadian model, where you have physicians, sort of the Florida medical model, where you have physicians, they have responsibility, they give patients a prescription. The prescription is tied to a specific provider. That provider provides, provides the cannabis as specified by the doctor. The physicians have responsibility. So there we've acquired CanMart, UK. That Namaste was about to do it, but given their strategic focus and where they restructured, they elected not to proceed. When they elected not to proceed, we jumped in. No harm, no foul, all's good. And so that's the UK. Now we're looking at Holland, we're looking at Germany.
Wow.
For other sorts of distribution. People love our stock. It's one of the, I think, 10 most actively traded stocks, marijuana stocks worldwide.
Wow.
You take our German volume, you take our US volume, I think we're even higher in terms of shares and dollars.
Congratulations. That's incredible. That in itself is a huge feat, because when you think of top 10 stocks, you don't necessarily think of Halo. So the fact that you guys are that liquid, it goes to show that the investors are tracking you, watching you, and investing in you. And I've seen that growth, because I've seen how many people are watching now on Twitter, and I've seen your growth. And you did a conference call, and you had quite a few people on that conference call too.
Yeah, there were about 100 people on it.
So I remember when we first started doing this and there wasn't many people watching. So it's really growing. Facebook groups, Twitter. I see you guys are really growing in interest and enthusiasm from investors all over the world. So congratulations. I'm really, really happy that is moving in the right direction.
Hard. I mean, we work tirelessly. A lot of people say, well, how do you work compared to other people? And I say, with all due respect, we work as hard as we can. But, like guys like Nick Vita at Columbia Care, he's always on too. So
totally,
there are guys that are always on. We're always on. I wouldn't say we work any harder than anyone else, but we work as hard as we can. So internationally things are going, and we'll actually see some meaningful revenue. Margins are really high. Margins will compress over time. It's the standard sort of rigmarole there. California is then our focus again. We had this massive vape crisis that really punched everyone in the gut, right? Especially in Q4. December, we started to see a return to normalcy. And I was on the phone with the guys from Jupiter, which is the primary, subsidiary of Tilt, I think it was last week. And they said that what we're seeing and they're seeing is a massive uptick so far in January.
Great.
So we're all starting to see this sort of return to normalcy. And they're seeing it. They have better intelligence than me, because they're marketing to everyone throughout the United States. So they're saying, look, we're going to start to see a return to normalcy in this. So that's a really good sign. As we said, we made an announcement that we put our vapes on ease. Those are selling. They're selling, at a good pace. And now in California, and we've mentioned this to people, is that we're planning to go seed to sale. So we're trying to integrate from our manufacturing base into a cultivation procurement base. We have our distribution through Cannabis and now through MDT. Now we're looking at retail. We're aggressively looking at retail in order to capture more margin. We could not do that in Oregon because we're so large in Oregon that it would piss off our existing dispensary customers. But in California, we're not one of the big boys yet, so we can start to do vertical integration, right? So we're looking at that. Let's look for some announcements or some news from us around that area. We're trying really hard. And then Oregon is, returning to normal. It's growing. We've learned our lesson through this vape crisis. I think, in all three markets, and that is that you need to have flower, you need to have pre-rolls. You just can't depend on the oil, even though the oil is growing, because that whole vape thing really punched everyone pretty hard. And the fact that we have such large grows in Oregon, we're going to add some more. We have, we're going to, again, in Oregon, we're looking to add more what I call back-end grow capacity there. And so, and then people say to me, well, what about Illinois? What about Massachusetts? What about this? What about that? The only other market we're really looking at right now is Canada. But Canada, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach, I think. In the sense, in Canada, our thought process is more to go after shelf space, because right now there are a lot of LPs fighting for slotting fees and shelf space.
Yes.
So strategically work with some bigger dispensary players on shelf space. And if that restricts our ability to be an LP, then what we do is enter into a technology transfer deal with an LP, and then let the LP white label for us. Because there's certain provinces, I believe, in Canada, where if you're in retail, you can't be in manufacturing or cultivation. There's some lines in Canada, right? And I'm just coming up to speed on that. So really, from Halo's perspective, we have international with our emphasis in Lesotho, and we're not planning to put grows throughout the world to diversify. We're really planning to be there and just get distribution in other countries.
Great.
Then we have California, where we're trying to move seed to sale. And we have Oregon, where we're trying to augment our back end in order to have a more diversified product base, right?
Yeah.
And in Oregon, it's really fundamental. Increased distribution in existing dispensaries, increased dispensary penetration, and increased product offering, right? In California, it'll be a similar sort of path, but we're trying to get the whole ecosystem in place.
Wow. Sounds like you guys have a lot of stuff on the go. That's crazy. Between America, Canada, Africa, Europe, you guys are going to have a crazy year, Kiran. But it's exciting, and I have a couple questions from the audience. Can I ask you?
Absolutely.
So Pete Ferraro is asking, how much cash does Halo have on hand, and what do you think of the New Jersey market?
Okay, so in terms of cash on hand, we have adequate cash on hand as per Q3, where we didn't have to say we had less than 12 months of cash on hand.
Very good.
Also, keep in mind, we have a $10 million credit facility,
yes,
right, that we can draw upon. But I can't give you the exact cash on hand right now, but I'll tell you, I look at it every week.
Good.
And our goal is to always enter each week with equal to or greater cash than we had the following week, right?
Very good.
And over the last couple of weeks, just looking at that metric, we're like within $20,000.
Very good. Very good.
So cash is really key right now, and we're doing a lot of deals with stock. And then a lot of people come to me and say, oh my God, dilution. I went to Wharton Business School, and I had a great professor, Professor Gandhi, and he always talked about, antonyms, right? So to dilution, the other side is accretion, right? So if I'm able to use our stock in such a way where I can get something accretive within a year that will drive us towards profitability, right? To me, using the stock is a useful tool, right? So people have to understand that when they talk about dilution, they got to look at the other side of the coin, which is accretion.
Well, I mean, a great example is Aurora Cannabis. Everybody's all over them. They've got too much dilution. They got over 1 billion shares, but they're also in 25 countries. They've also used that stock to acquire some of the biggest assets like MediPharm Labs. Not MediPharm Labs. CannyMed and MedRelief, just to mention a couple of the companies that they've acquired with stock.
Right.
And they didn't have the cash to acquire them. They acquired them with stock. But now these are massive assets. These are companies that people forget were trading at $30 before Aurora acquired them with stock. So the biggest advantage of being a public company is that you have shares, which if used properly, you can use to pay insiders, employees, consultants, attorneys, and use to acquire assets, and use to acquire revenue generating assets, which essentially is the Berkshire Hathaway model that Warren Buffett used to build his empire, and why now we see Berkshire Hathaway trading at $300,000 a share, because he didn't use cash to acquire those businesses. He used convertible preferred shares to acquire those entities that are revenue generating. This is why we see Warren Buffett as one of the most successful investors ever. A lot of people don't understand that he used stock to acquire his growth.
Yeah, I think of him every time I walk by a See's candy store.
Yeah.
Because I remember that was one of his first acquisitions. And that's just tried and true. But that's a really important point. So right now, you have what I call the big boys. I mean, our market cap stayed around 100 million Canadian. And I think last year, if you look at the Hummus, HUMMUS, the US index, I think we were the 9th best performing stock.
Wow.
Even though down, we were the 9th best performing stock. I think we were down like 22% last year, something like that, 23%. Don't quote me.
That's incredible.
But in any event, we're sort of in this sweet spot because we're seeing deal flow, so much deal flow. And remember, we have Katie and Scott on staff. We have like a full M&A staff in-house. And we're seeing a lot of deal flow that's too small for the big MSOs, but there's no one else sort of competing with us except for private guys, right? So private check writers are competing with us. And we're the only sort of, what I'm seeing, sort of public guy when we're going after certain, what I call marquee assets. Because right now, what I'm focused on right now is exactly what you said, which is companies that have a proven track record of generating positive cash flow, right?
Very good.
Now, I want to qualify that for everyone. And that is with 280E, which is the IRS tax code that we're all subject to. It's very hard for anyone almost, except for the biggest of big, to generate after-tax profit. We're just starting to see some of that in the US.
Yes.
But in terms of what I call pre-tax cash flow, we're starting to see a lot of smaller guys who have it, who are looking to consolidate.
Very good. And what's funny is last year and even the year before, we saw so many acquisitions. And I just feel like you're not going to see as many this year. A lot of people are saying they will see a lot. I don't think we will. And the reason is, this is my belief system. If I'm a public company and I'm Aurora Cannabis and my stock is down 80%, I don't have the same value in my shares as I did last year. So it's much more difficult to go out there and acquire these assets because you are going to have to dilute. For the most part, because a lot of these guys don't really know how to structure their companies. If they actually knew how to structure their companies, and I'd love to work with you on this because I can help anybody with this, you can use convertible preferred shares, create a separate class of convertible preferred shares that are anti-dilutive so you can use them to go and acquire assets and not dilute your stock. Unfortunately, too many people don't know how to do this.
Right. So we actually have, when we did our RTO, we put in a convertible shelf.
Good.
We put in a Class B shelf.
Very smart.
We have all these shelves at our disposal.
Genius. And this is how you do it. This is how you do it.
Yeah. And so we have those at our disposal. But what I'm, you speak about Aurora Cannabis. One thing I want to tell everybody is that we don't have, a lot of people ask me now, a lot of people have started freaking out over all the convertible debt that's out there. Our convertible debt comes due in 2023. I think it's like $12 million Canadian. And all the interest was escrow. What our former chairman made us do was when we took the convertible debt, he made us take a portion of it, put it into escrow. So our interest payments are basically almost to maturity escrow. So we don't even look at it.
Very good.
The only other debt we have is $1 million Canadian that we took off our working capital line. And the lender, who's a shareholder, wants to convert it into stock because he thinks there's relative value in the stock right now.
Totally. I mean,
our balance sheet is pretty much clean right now.
Very good.
And our
That's
current
amazing.
assets far exceed our current liabilities. And so we're looking pretty good. In Q4 and Q3, a lot of people sort of rapped me on the knuckles and said, look, your income statement was really, really, your revenues went down, you had all this other stuff going on, your margin shrunk. I said, absolutely. But the one thing that we worked on was the balance sheet. So we could we could start acquiring things, we could start generating cash. So the whole idea was to shrink down, clean up the balance sheet, to generate cash in order to make acquisitions, to come out of this, what I call this complete, downturn in the industry, stronger and more agile.
And I think you have. It's clear because you guys are out there acquiring businesses while nobody else is. So
True.
This is extremely important. You know, a year ago, 2 years ago, everybody was acquiring everybody, right? So that was normal. Everybody was throwing money at these cannabis stocks. That was normal. Now we had this huge reset. And what's going to happen is the strong will survive. I was just at the largest cannabis expo in Canada this weekend. And what I found, which was very interesting for me, was all the big companies from last year were no longer the big companies this year.
Interesting.
It was a full reversal. Like, Aurora wasn't anywhere to be seen. Afria wasn't anywhere to be seen. Canopy Growth wasn't anywhere to be seen. The three biggest companies in Canada, nowhere to be seen. Now, the company that's risen to the top, as far as I'm concerned, which is in your space, Valens Growworks.
Oh, excellent.
Excellent company.
What's his name? Toby or
Toby.
Toby, yeah. Yeah, he's a smart guy.
Wow. You want to talk about a sharp guy? You want to talk about a
Sharp guy.
amazing company? I got a chance to interview them. They had a beautiful booth. They were doing giveaways. They were doing interviews with everybody. They were personable. They really maximized the conference. And I wasn't surprised to see the stock go up 7% yesterday because I told everybody that they were the most impressive company at the conference. Not only are they more profitable than anybody else in the industry right now,
Correct.
but they are going to continue to grow and they're doing business the right way. And
they're sharp on technology. They're
very,
sharp on brands.
very.
I'm trying to work with him on dad tabs actually. And you just reminded me. I got to give him a call.
Yeah, you know, and I was going to
spoke to him
suggest
last year, and he was off to Colombia or something, and he loved the dad tabs. He said I've heard about him, but it's sort of, and the other thing that's cool about them is they're one of the only guys who are actually sort of progressively and aggressively adopting volatile extraction for Canada. Right.
they are doing something special, man. And I'm telling you, I've been telling everybody, I think that this is one of the hottest stocks to invest in right now. And they have like an $8.45 price target. They're currently at $3.60. I think they hit that in 2020.
I mean, and you look at the performance of them last year, you look at the performance of MetaPharm, that was like the year of extractors, right?
Yeah.
I think this year, my sort of view is this is going to be the year of sort of Europe. People are going to start looking at, Germany, meaningful revenue. There's a big company sitting there in Holland that, I've met Karsten and I want to do some business with them called Bedrocan, which is the original Bedrocan, which is owned by the Swarovski family.
Okay.
Private. Yeah, the Crystal family, and they put a lot of money into Europe. They're actually in Lesotho too. They blasted a side of the mountain and putting up a massive indoor grow.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
So it's it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see a pivot, sort of a pivot in the investment sentiment towards what I call rest of the world other than North America. And I think it'll be more European, African focused. We've seen a lot of Colombia with Chiron last year,
yes,
and Alvaro and those guys. I think I'll see a lot of that. And it wasn't why we went to Africa. It was the reason we went to Africa was we saw it to be a much greater opportunity than going to Florida and buying a license for $100 million or fighting for turf in Illinois, right?
I agree with you. I think it's genius. I mean, we are in the verge of a brand new hyper-growth industry.
Correct.
Everybody's so focused on Canada and the United States. I think it's genius to be going where you're not going to have as much competition.
Correct.
We've seen this in California. I've heard it from so many people. California is saturated.
Oh.
Right?
Oh my God.
Right?
And that's why we're going seed to sale.
Exactly.
Because if I start pumping product to dispensaries, right, the days outstanding are 60 to 90 days.
That's right.
But if I'm going to the consumer direct, I'm much better off.
Totally.
Right?
You're getting money in your hands right away.
And that's part of the reason we want to align much closer with ease. Because ease, the figures aren't public, but people are saying anywhere between 10 to 15 million dollars a month of retail sales come through their platform in California. Whether that's a real figure, none of us really know, but we know they're the BMU. And we know that they're responsible for a big lion's share of Kaliba shares, North Cal, East of Eden, on and on, Telos. I mean, they're responsible for some of these dispensaries, the lion's share of their sales, from what I gather.
It's huge. Now,
Yeah.
I also do interviews with Delta 9 Cannabis.
Right.
They're in Manitoba, and
Right.
they've got quite a few stores, and they're doing quite well. I'm going to try to see if I can introduce you to John, because I think that would be a great relationship to get your dab tabs on their shelves.
Yep.
I'm also working very closely here with Spirit Leaf. Have you heard of Spirit Leaf?
No, I haven't heard of them. I've heard of Delta 9, but
Spirit Leaf has a whole bunch of dispensaries across Canada. I believe over 30. And they've got a couple here in Vancouver. And I'm going to be speaking directly to the owners very soon. And I'm going to introduce them a little bit to Halo Labs as well. Maybe we can get you guys in their stores. There's another company here called Meta, National Access Cannabis. They've got like 30 stores across Canada. And I've been talking and doing a lot of work with them too. I'm going to try to see if I can get you in contact with them too. So there's quite a few dispensary store chains that are starting to really grow across Canada right now, that are becoming very popular, and they're looking for more products to have on the shelves. Because your products are so unique, specifically the dab tab, I think they could all benefit from working with you guys. And because you're trying to get into Canada, and I already have relationships with some of these companies, I'm going to try to see if I can make an introduction, and hopefully we can get you into Canada sooner rather than later.
yeah, we're just starting to feel our way in Canada right now.
Great.
I wouldn't expect anything in like the immediate term,
Totally.
but we definitely are starting to, we've looked at it, and now we're looking at it in reverse, where, you maybe look at more retail and white label and providing the technology. The other thing we're starting to see in the US is just a trend, especially in California, towards solventless extraction. And I
Solventless.
know that, people like Supreme were working on it up in Canada, where you actually don't use a solvent to extract, but you use mechanical extraction. And so some of
Wow.
the things we're looking at right now is to automate those mechanical extraction processes, because it's a far superior product. Right now it's considered bougie because it's so expensive. It's $120 a gram,
Wow.
in California.
Holy
There's a,
smokes.
there's a company called 710 Labs that's sort of the big guy in the space. But I see that coming to the masses. It's just a great product.
What do
Less
you
harsh, better effect, less dosing.
I
It's
have
just
a I have a
product.
message. Sorry to cut you off. I have a message. We have 61 people here watching live, by the way. Guys, if you haven't hit the like button, please smash the like button and go and visit and learn more about Halo Labs. I have a question here from Walt Taggart. I was in Vegas last month and picked up dab tabs. I love it and plan on getting more. People love your dab tabs, man.
Great. Awesome. No, it's a great product because, as I said, be it solventless, be it shatter, be it live resin. The one thing we learned about dab tabs is that you don't put distillate in dab tabs, right? You put broad spectrum stuff in dab tabs because dab tabs is a higher end product, and it requires a higher end product. And you've heard my philosophy is that, we sell vape cartridges because they're a big mover, but myself, I'm a prime believer in broad spectrum, rawer products, right? Than really high refined products, really high in THC.
I have another question from the audience. Does Halo Labs work with Cookies Dispensary?
Interesting. Right now we don't work with cookies, but let's talk through this because it's a very interesting question. So, given the fact that now we have this relationship with DNA that everyone knows about, look, there are really three other guys, three other big players in the same space. So there's There's Glass House, which is owned by Slang. Great guys. Billy and those guys, great guys. So, but Glass House is sort of like DNA, where they're pretty much internationally focused, right? So, but then you have these really what I call high-end guys in California. Cookies, right?
Yeah.
You have Alien Labs, you know, very high-end in Skittles. So yes, I mean that's something we would aspire to work. Those are guys we're aspiring to work with. You know, we're trying to lure guys like that and others into Oregon, and then maybe get some international rights. Maybe look to see if we can somehow weasel our way into California with them as well through indoor grows. So yeah, we're trying. We're trying really hard, and that's a smart insight.
And I think that's what makes this community so special here right now is we do have intelligent investors, and they follow you guys, right?
Right.
They follow your products.
I get as much out of this probably as I give to it, meaning that through the questions, it sort of affirms certain things I'm thinking. It sort of, when you talked about the convertible now, I'm going to get on the blower with my guys, and talk to them about it at 11 o'clock, so no, it's it's very interactive. It's very different from other sort of, other sort of shows or other sorts of things I do.
Well, it's good because, when I'm going live, I'm going into the Facebook groups and that are Halo Lab centric, and I'm like, we're going live. And I'm going to the Twitter, and I'm like, we're going live. And I'm putting it out there because I want people that are following the story to watch so that they can ask us these questions and we can have this interactive experience because, to be quite frank, Kiran, there's nobody else doing what you're doing.
Right. That's true. At this point, that's true.
That makes you quite unique, right? And the only other company I could think of that did this was Namaste. Right. And Namaste built an empire of investors because of it. And
true.
And once Sean left, obviously things have changed and they've gone through ups and downs. But before that, I can't explain to you how much momentum they built by doing these live streams and doing these calls, because it allowed investors to have an opportunity to really get to know the guys behind the company and get to know the company that they're investing in. There's very few companies doing that. And even when I was at the Cannabis conference, the Lift conference in Vancouver, I just found that there's a lot of companies that are just shy. They're shy because the sector's been doing poorly. They're shy because they are afraid that investors are unhappy. They're shy because things are not going their way. The thing I really respect about you, Kiran, and with Halo Labs is regardless of how the market has gone, regardless of how your stock has done, regardless of how things are going on in the sector, you always show up, you're honest, and you're transparent. And I think investors really appreciate that. More than anything else, I think investors appreciate the fact that you're willing to come out here, talk to us, and be transparent, because it has been difficult. And when I was at the conference, I was really shocked to see that Canopy Growth, Aphria, and Aurora were nowhere to be found in the biggest conference in Canada, in the country that they dominate. It just doesn't make sense to me, but it does because it shows me that everyone's taking a step back. They really are. They're taking a step back. So while they're taking a step back, you're going out there and getting the business.
We're trying, yeah.
That's genius. That's how you. This is the model of Tesla. Look at Elon Musk. Perfect example. While everyone else is trying to figure out electric vehicles, these guys almost went bankrupt multiple times. Now the stock's at $530, and he's worth $31 billion.
It was interesting that Todd, right before this call, I had a quick call with Todd Shapiro, and he mentioned the same thing. But it's you got to look at it from their perspective too. I mean, these guys everyone's been really beaten down. Besides the stock, we've had the vape crisis. Then we had this scandal with, I forgot the name of the company, up there where they're doing fake grow rooms, and we've had all sorts of craziness, right?
Yes.
And the craziness continues. Yep. You see this Harvest Falcon lawsuit. You see, it's just there's a lot of, and it's really hard sometimes as a CEO. And I've spoken to a few CEOs who've resigned. They just said the pressure is so intense they can't take it.
It is.
I personally thrive on pressure, right? I'm kind of a weird guy. So the harder it gets, the tighter it gets, the more I want to fight, the more I want to try to do good, right? And remember, I take all my pay in shares, right? I haven't taken a dime out of the company, except for maybe my expenses, but some of those I even take in shares. Philip takes all of his pay in shares. Andreas takes all of his pay in shares. So you have the three co-founders the three founders doing that. So it's, we're strong believers in the company. And in our mind, a lot of what our company is right now is sort of a call option on the future. And I think a lot of cannabis is that, speaking technically, because you have our stock at whatever it is now, 32, 33 cents. I mean, that's like option money,
So I don't know if you're aware of this, but are you aware that if you take your pay in convertible preferred shares, they are anti-dilutive and you can convert them at the par value of the public vehicle?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, you could do that.
And check this out. Believe me, I've been around the game for a long time, Kiran. Believe me, I've restructured many public companies. I know how to house value through convertible preferred shares. Convertible preferred shares are an equity instrument. So when you actually receive payment in convertible preferred shares, they show up on your balance sheet as equity.
Correct.
As opposed to debt.
As opposed to debt, correct.
So when you're paying yourselves and your employees in convertible preferred shares, you now have an equity instrument that's showing up on your balance sheet as opposed to a debt instrument.
Right. And then what you do is you get the interest to pay in kind.
Correct. And you can convert. You don't have
because the whole concept of taking shares is to preserve cash.
Yes.
But right now cash is punitive.
Yes.
Right.
But the beautiful thing is taking it in convertible preferred shares is you can convert just a small little tiny portion because you can put the par value at anything you choose.
Correct.
So you can structure it to put the par value at any price you choose, and you can convert tiny little portions of equity.
Right.
And when you do that and you put it on your balance sheet, it shows up as equity on your balance sheet. So you're actually not creating any debt. You're building equity when issuing convertible preferred shares. This is something that most CEOs don't really understand. If Aurora Cannabis knew how to do this, they wouldn't be in the problem they're in. So unfortunately, too many CEOs and public companies really don't understand the public markets as far as how to structure their shares. And what they're doing is they're issuing shares infinitum, and they are creating a massive amount of dilution. Now, if you were doing it with convertible preferred shares, you wouldn't have to have any dilution whatsoever because it's once again considered an equity instrument. So imagine if you create a class of preferred shares like you've done, and now you use that to acquire your next asset. And let's say that asset's valued at $2 million. Now those shares show up on your balance sheet as a $2 million asset.
No, I get what you're saying with the convertible preferred, and it depends on what view you take of your stock at the time of conversion, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a critical component to it. So yeah, it's a very bullish way of doing it.
And it's funny because there's so many companies, like a lot of people don't understand the markets. Like I've been in the stock market since 2007, so I've seen a lot. And one thing I've learned about the stock market is liquidity is everything. It's not even the price. And you talk to bankers, they'll tell you this. They don't even care about the price. They want liquidity. Well, guess what? You guys have traded already 1 million shares today. So you have a lot of liquidity. As long as there's liquidity in the stock, that's when the market makers show interest. That's when the bankers show interest. That's when outside acquisition show interest because now they look at your stock, they see it's trading, and they're like, yeah, you know what? I'd be interested in working with you because they're considering how much shares they're going to get in a liquid market, how much they can make, and it makes sense. Now, if you have a higher price, but your stock doesn't trade and it trades by appointment, there's no value there because there's no liquidity.
It's not a real price because one block can. No, I agree. I'm sort of, maybe I'm not unique, but my background is finance. I mean, I went to Wharton, my MBA. I worked at Merrill Lynch and M&A. I ran a private equity fund that I took public on the LSE AIM. So that's my background. So Yeah, I mean, it's a question of utilizing it, right? I totally agree.
Check this out. One of our members, Pete Ferraro, says, I just bought 50,000 shares of Halo. Love what I am hearing, Rich.
Well, thanks, Pete, for your support.
So love it, guys. And guys, this is what I want to hear. Like I want to hear the feedback, guys. Do you like what we're doing? Is there anything that you want to know from Kiran while we're live? We got 69 people here watching. One question was, and I've asked you this before, but we'll just ask it again. And I already know the answer, but it was asked, so I'm going to ask it. Why are you on the Neo exchange, and do you plan on getting off the exchange? Now, I already know the answer, but I want you to kind of tell us again, because I know that you believe that it is a very good exchange, and you believe that one of the reasons why you have a lot of liquidity is because you are on the Neo exchange, correct?
Right. I mean, so the Neo, there's so many companies on the CSC. And the NEO is even a higher level of scrutiny than the CSC, because the NEO is a senior exchange like the TSC. So we have internal control frameworks. When we issue shares, it's not like the CSC. The CSC is like, it's a junior exchange. The NEO is a senior exchange. Also, it's a more orderly market in the NEO, where you don't have the same amount of volatility, because that's what the NEO exchange was designed for. But something that was really cool, and I don't know if some of your viewers saw this, but they did a billboard campaign for me over Christmas in Toronto. Wow. So I was in Union Station, and I was, in Halo, they were promoting it in billboards. And see, that's what's unique, because we're on the NEO, Columbia Care's on the NEO, Cannabate's on the NEO, and we're three guys, I have to say, three fish in that pond. And so they do stuff for us that they don't do for, that the CSC typically wouldn't do.
That's amazing.
While we're getting volume like this, and while things are going well, there's no need to think to downlist to the CSC. But the NEO is a more costly exchange than the CSC, and there's more overhead to it, given the fact that we have to have like an internal control framework, we have to have internal testing. It's a higher standard. Also, we have to report a lot quicker. So we have to report 30 days quicker on everything.
So it's almost like being on the OTCQX exchange versus the OTCQB. Would you give it?
It is, but it's more like being on the NYC versus the OTCQX. We're on the OTCQX, but it's more like that because the NEO is modeled more. It's a senior exchange like the TSC. So the requirements are, I think, similar, if not identical.
Wow, that's great. So hopefully that answers your question. Right. We have a couple more questions. Do you think that being on NEO restricts quick growth in stock price?
What it does is it supposedly restricts low lows and high highs. So it doesn't allow for
crazy
what's it called, bots coming in.
Okay.
So you see things being more tempered on the low side and the high side is the theory behind the exchange. It was to sort of eliminate that sort of programmatic or whatever bot trading. Again, I came up on the banking side. I didn't come up on the trading side.
Another question is regarding vertical integration in California. Are you looking to purchase one of 16 licenses issued in California?
I don't know which ones those are. Do they mean one of the 60 licenses? No, California's an open market, so at the state level, you just have to apply like Oregon. It's not a limited license state. But where California tends to become limited is by the specific jurisdictions. So for instance, Los Angeles just had another sort of, it wasn't a lottery, but an open window period, different municipalities. So there's a lot of stuff on the local level in California that's inhibiting or precluding growth, as opposed to the state level, which is open, like Oregon used to be before they clamped down. And Washington is to residents, and Colorado is, relatively speaking.
Okay, very good. I have a question from Jean saying, does the Mendo revenue will be included in Q4 2019 financials, 2019 annual earnings in pro forma, or will it be included in Q1 2020?
Q1 2020.
Awesome.
So we closed that right at the beginning of the year, as opposed to the end of the year. And that was basically, some of it was for tax purposes for the sellers.
Okay, great. And how was the arrangement with Caliva been working out in California?
So it's interesting with Caliva, we have a very good relationship, but I want to start expanding the business more, you know. So that's another thing that's like on the top of my list here, is to expand the relationship with Caliva.
Very good.
And
that's a great relationship.
It's interesting with Caliva is, I mean, they're really a world-class organization, right? I mean, I couldn't speak in terms of private companies in the space, and in terms of a management team. I mean, those guys are just world-class.
It's great that you guys are working with those guys. And is Halo going to expand into the cannabis edibles and beverage space?
We are in Oregon, and if someone wants to pull up the MDT press release, in there we talk about an edibles kitchen.
Great.
And we have an option on one. Great. And you know, we're looking at it. And we have a very specific sort of Halo way of doing edibles, where again, what we look for is the Kirkland model. I mean, we're very value based, so we try to give you, you know, the most powerful edible for your buck, you know, or the most powerful tincture for your buck.
How many milligrams can you put in edibles there? Because here you can't put more than 10 milligrams per package.
I know in Oregon it's 1,000, and I don't know the specifics
Wow.
in California.
That is
we
nuts.
We have a really good, I haven't looked at BDS, but we have our chew in Oregon really is a real good seller.
Yeah, I can't even imagine 1,000 milligrams. That would just put you out.
It's squared off. It's, you know, so you take as much as you want.
Okay,
right?
so you just take a little piece at a time.
Yeah, you take unless you're like, you know, I know certain guys who can take a whole one, you know?
Yeah, you know Joey,
for 3 days.
you know Joey Diaz? He's all on the Joe Rogan show. He's a comedian.
Right.
Joey Diaz. He takes 500 milligram edibles at a time.
Oh my God.
And he's like, I'll sit there on the couch and just start eating pizza, and I'm just so like, he's done. He's a big guy, right?
Oh,
and
he must be a really big guy with a high level of tolerance.
Yeah, he's a very high level of tolerance, and he tells me how he talks about how he takes these 500 milligrams, and I'm like, that's crazy, because here in Canada, you're taking 10 milligrams and you go right to sleep.
That's true.
So I can't imagine taking 500. That would like put a horse to sleep. So
Right.
That's crazy. Another thing I want to ask you about is, how was MJ Biz? Because here, the Lift conference was a little interesting. Fire and Flower gets on stage, another huge dispensary retail chain. They're doing quite well. I really like them. And the representative, I can't remember if it was the CEO who was speaking, was so negative. Everything he was saying was negative, talking about how people are going bankrupt, people are going out of business, companies are losing money, everybody's holding on to inventory. And it was just so negative. And I was like, whoa, like, get off the stage, man. Was MJ Biz negative? Because I had a lot of people say to me that was at the conference that MJ Biz was also very negative. It was kind of a negative conference. Like, there was a negative tone. Is that the case? I know you were there. Like,
I was there. Yeah, I was there. But what was really funny was that I was so busy because we have an office there.
Yeah.
That I was in back to back meetings. So I got my pass the day before I registered, but I never went to the floor.
Yeah.
I never left my office.
Good for you. Good for you.
It was just a revolving door of meetings, and like 2 breakfasts, 2 dinners, and drinks. But I didn't feel so much a negative tone. I didn't really feel a negative tone.
Good.
I just felt people wanting to get, you know, at least from my perspective, people wanting to get stuff done, right?
Yeah.
People wanting to transact.
Yeah, I don't know if negative tone. It's just there was a lot of conversation of doom and gloom at the conference.
Oh, no, it's constant.
Yeah.
It's a constant conversation. I
Which
call it the
sucks.
sea of red.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just sad. It's like, let's just change the tone, right? Let's change the conversation. Like,
change the tone.
Yeah, let's get over it. I was the same way. I was back to back. I did 10 CEO interviews on Friday, back to back to back to back to back. I sat down in the chair and I didn't finish until I sat at 10 a.m. and I didn't finish until 4 p.m. I didn't even get up to eat. Food was brought to me and drinks were brought to me because companies wanted to get on the show, which was great. So I was very happy about that. And I felt like it was it was a very good conference. But when I spoke to others that were walking the floor, listening to some speakers were very positive and it was very, very, very good. But there was a few that were just very negative, talking about the doom and gloom. Everyone's talking about Aurora's going to zero.
Right.
I don't think Aurora's going to zero. Do you think Aurora's going to zero?
No.
Right?
No, that will be restructured.
Yeah, and this is what I've been trying to explain, even when I spoke to Valens and some of the bigger companies there. And I said, do you guys think Aurora's going to zero? And they're like, no.
No.
So it's just nonsense that people are saying that. I also want to ask you about another thing. I'm going to change gears for a second. So this entire sector has been completely attacked by lawsuits. The shorters have used this tactic now, and pretty much anytime a stock goes down, they're going to sue you, which is crazy because in the stock market, what are you going to do? You're going to sue every time a stock goes down? I mean, that's essentially what's happening now, and people are being misinformed. People are getting letters in the mail saying, hey, join the lawsuit. They don't realize that they'll most likely never make any money. They're just joining a lawsuit so these shorters can have extra ammunition to take the stock down so they can make money on the short.
Correct.
Right?
That
so
happens a lot of the time.
This is what happens, I would say, about 70 to 80% of the time. Once in a while, they do settle, and this is happening. Okay, we've seen Namaste actually just had to recently settle. I believe it was $15 million of lawsuits. So this is destroying the sector, these short attacks. Now, a shorter here in Canada called Grizzly Research wrote a report on TrueLeave and attacked them very, very badly and went into their past, went into Kim Rivers' past with her husband, went into some really dirty places. And TrueLeave attacked with force and is now countersuing for libel.
Correct.
I'm really impressed with the way TrueLeave handled this.
All that news everyone knew before?
Correct.
The whole thing, it was in the public domain.
Correct.
So all they did was rehash public domain.
Correct. And they also put some stuff out there that they couldn't prove. So TrueLeave is now fighting back with force in Florida, where lawsuits are very serious.
Of course.
Like this Canadian firm is going to go bankrupt on this, most likely, because if they get sued for millions of dollars, which they could easily be sued for millions of dollars because you're attacking a multi-million-dollar corporation that is growing exponentially and you're dragging their name in the mud.
Right.
So if this firm now gets sued for millions and let's say it goes bankrupt, could that change the environment? Could we see less companies getting sued? Could we see less companies having lawsuits? Could you see less shorters taking this approach? Because I think we need that.
I don't know. I think there'll always be a yin and a yang. I think for everyone who buys a stock, someone sells its stock. For everyone who has a call, there's a put. So I always think that some of that is really healthy, but as you said, there's an abuse to it. You know?
Yes.
Some of the stuff is very valid, and I just don't know.
It's going too far. It's going.
I just sort of looked at the TrueLeave thing peripherally as I did my morning reading, but and then I saw the way they responded. But I think there's a good balance. I mean, I think it's a good balance that you have people looking at the short side as well as the long side, right? Everyone was wrong.
No, I agree with you 100% there. It's sad to see, like, I go to Marijuana Index for a lot of my information on it, on cannabis stocks. And if you look at the headlines, it's all lawsuits.
Right. Interesting.
It's become inundated with lawsuits.
But that's what happened in 2007 during the financial crisis too.
Correct.
People who bought at that time, are smiling, and the people who sold right now are, you always buy low, sell high. But if we all knew when that was, we wouldn't be sitting here talking to one another today.
But doesn't that take away some of the whole risk involved in the stock market? Like we are investing to make money, And there's always a chance the stock can go down. If every time a stock goes down, a company sued, the public sued those companies, none of these companies would be able to stay public. They'd all go bankrupt.
Oh, no, it's D&O insurance in the cannabis space is quite expensive.
So
That's what I have to say.
it's something that I'm a little bit concerned about, and I hope we can really get past this, because it started with one company, then two companies, then three companies. Now it seems like almost everybody's getting lawsuits.
It's a cascade. I agree.
And I really hope that we can move past that, and these shorters can just move past that. And I truly believe, in my opinion, what I've been putting out there in my community, and we're gonna finish this live stream pretty soon because we've been live for 54 minutes, and thank you for that. I've been saying that, in my opinion, the reason why the shorters are attacking the cannabis sector is because they can't attack the broader markets right now. Because the broader markets continue to go up. We're in a market melt up. The markets are at all-time highs. They just keep going up. So if you're a shorter, you're not going to short Apple. You're not going to short Tesla. You're not going to short Facebook. So you're going to go to the new sectors. You're going to go to 5G stocks. You're going to go to cannabis stocks. New sector, still new, going from illegal to legal. Obviously, there's a lot of skeletons in the closet. We all know this. So it's an easy target. And I feel that this is really why they're here, because they can't compete right now and short anything else. So they're just inundating the cannabis sector. What do you think about that? Do you think that there's some truth to that?
I think what you're saying, there's some truth to it, because if you're a shorter, you want to short in a sector that is suffering, right?
Correct.
Right? Because you're riding that momentum down.
That's right.
And the critical thing is to, as I said, as a company, is to continue to grow and to continue to, despite market conditions, to continue to stay the course.
Absolutely. 100%.
And that's what we're trying to do, right?
And you know what? I'm really proud to be, part of the sector. I know you are as well. Right. We've got 68 people watching right now. We've had over 70 people watching live today. So once again, a very good showing, Kiran. If there's anything that you could leave the investors that are watching all over the world right now with about Halo Labs, what would it be?
Well, I think the one thing about us is that we're tireless and we're working really hard. We're aligned with our shareholders. We're shareholders. As we said, we take our pay in stock, and we're really focused on, despite whatever the market sentiments are, we're really focused on keeping our heads down and executing our strategy. And Fantastic. That's what we're doing.
And if anybody that is watching wanted to get in contact with you, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
I think it's ir@halocana.com, for investor relations. But people get a hold of me a lot. I would say that I'm interacting with shareholders at least 5 to 6 times a day.
That is amazing. Right? And that's why we love you.
And I don't, it's not like I filter everyone sort of like equal. See, because we as officers of a company work for the shareholders.
Correct.
The shareholders are our ultimate bosses.
Correct.
Right? Because the shareholders elect the board who appoint us, and therefore the shareholders are the ones who we work for. It's not for ourselves.
You are a class act, my friend. Congratulations on all of your success so far. And I wish you and Halo Labs and all the investors that are watching, thank you guys for watching here and joining us, all the best of luck and great success in your future endeavors. Keep up all the great work, and let's get you on the show again very, very soon. Hopefully we can just do this once a week.
Yeah, perfect. All right, thanks, Rich. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Everybody, thank you for watching. This is Kiran Sidhu, the CEO of Halo Labs. Have a great day. If you're not winning, you're not watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining, and have a great day.
Thanks, Rich.